Hey, I'm Monica Fernandes with Evolution Essentials. In this video, I'm talking with recruiter Barbara Indiaan, a talent acquisition specialist, and she is sharing with us how to cope with stress of unemployment or furlough. For over a decade, I've been helping hundreds of women lead a wellness lifestyle with holistic tools such as essential oils and other alternative medicine techniques. So they have been able to have less stress, more love, and more balance in their life. I want you to feel the same. Make sure you stick around until the end of the video so you can grab my free gift. It's a surprise, but it's going to help you reduce stress. Oh, hi everyone. Welcome Barbara to Evolution Talks here on YouTube. Today I'm talking with Barbara Indiaan on how to cope with stress of unemployment or furlough. So I'm really excited to have you here because I feel like this topic is so important, not just during a pandemic, but I think in general. People that are in the job market, it can come a time where they come across this situation and it's very stressful. So before we get started, I just wanted to introduce you, and I wanted for people to know a little bit more about you. So if you could share that, that would be awesome.
Hi, Monica. First of all, thanks so much for having me. It's obviously a pleasure to be part of this. Definitely, I'm excited to share with your audience about this topic. For those that obviously don't know me, my name is Barbara Indiaan. I am a talent acquisition professional. Started out about 15 years ago in the staffing and recruiting industry. And have developed, working for different corporations, anywhere from mid to large size companies, and dealing with, candidate experience, employer branding. Obviously, the stress management piece comes into place when you're dealing with staffing and recruiting. You're dealing with the candidates. So I've done that for about 15 years now. And what I do now is actually the consulting piece to really expand and work more one-on-one with companies that are either doing a pre-opening for staffing and working closely with filtering out the top talent in this competitive market.
Wonderful.
That's a little bit about my background.
Great, and that's so important. I think it's a great service that you provide for companies, because I think companies want to hire the best. So
absolutely,
you as an expert can be that bridge. So that's wonderful. So for us to get started, I wanted to go a little bit about definitions of things, because I think maybe I wanted to talk about what unemployment is in general, what furlough also means, and so the differences between all of that. So could you shed a little bit of light on that?
Absolutely. So furlough, it's a term that many, I am sure, I think millions of people had probably maybe never even heard of before this pandemic. We're now in about 4 months into this pandemic, and you're obviously, doing searches on the internet, and you hear people talking about being furloughed. So what furlough actually means is that during an economic situation, in this case, it could be a pandemic or a crisis situation, which affects not only a country, but affects, the world. Companies have a mandatory reason now, unfortunately, to place their employees on a temporary leave, which is unpaid and comes obviously at a uncertain time for many, because again, you're never sure of where it can go. It could be a short-term furlough, it could be a long-term furlough, and the timing is very uncertain for many, as opposed to when you are laid off. Obviously that's knowing that you're permanently no longer with the company. So the term furlough has been out. I have many people contacting me also, and asking from my expertise to kind of define it a little more, and kind of simplify it for them. especially those maybe, are maybe English is not their first language. So it's new to many. And even those that, are even in the States, are international, are becoming more familiar with what it entails. And does it mean, do you go back to work after a certain time? That absolutely is up to the employer. Once you're out on a furlough, and depending on how long this pandemic, takes for a company to recover, or even to allow their teams to get back in place, absolutely, the employer can decide, all right, I'll have a selective group of departments or employees that will return back to work, while others, may have to wait a little longer. And some may, unfortunately, not even get that opportunity to return back to the company. And that's unfortunate to say, that it's not, the companies don't look at how long have you been with the company. It's all more about the financial aspect of it. So some companies may say, well, you've been with us for 10 years, but unfortunately, again, due to this COVID pandemic, we have to unfortunately eliminate your position. So it will vary. It will vary with those that are furloughed, if they are indeed called back to their workplace.
So someone is furloughed. If someone is furloughed, do they get any type of benefits, for example, insurance, still from their employer, or everything is sort of paused?
Good question. So obviously, in this case, a person that's furloughed, if a month or two goes by, they are going to either start looking for another opportunity. It could be maybe a side gig, or now with companies opening back up, may find a part-time opportunity. That actually depends on the employer as far as eligibility. Each employer per state will have to define how they want to move forward with that piece. If that employee, again, keep in mind, they're unpaid. It's an unpaid furlough. So it will have to be a discussion with the employer. From my knowledge, you do have many that obviously within 2 months, 3 months, once, the states or companies started opening back up, had to make a choice and say, look, I'm going to go ahead and either do my own business on the side, or just to make ends meet, or I will have to maybe, find the next best place to find something to have that extra means of income. So that really will vary on the employer.
So if someone is furloughed, can they apply for unemployment?
Yes. So what happens is the eligibility, obviously, when you go through that process, there's much information on the unemployment website. Department of Labor also, it's a good site to go on and kind of, get that information. If they meet the requirements and they are eligible, they are able to file for unemployment. And obviously until the end of July also, as far as that stimulus check for those unemployed, they would also be eligible. But the eligibility requirements, yes, would be available for those that are furloughed.
So, I mean, it also, these benefits, these government benefits, unemployment benefits can run out. And as you mentioned, they might very well run out. So for someone that has not found a job, or, is still hoping that the company starts back up again, that is a fountain of stress for them. Are there specific things that you would recommend to ease that process? Or I know it's very tough if really money is running out. So what are some of the things that they can do?
Well, first of all, when anybody goes through this, furloughed, layoff, or finding out your position has been eliminated, or, even, before the pandemic, during the pandemic, after the pandemic, overall,
yes,
I know many people, I've been laid off also in my career. It's a obviously tough challenge. It's when it comes unexpected. I think first thing is acceptance. You have to accept the fact that, things didn't go as planned. Obviously that's key. That's key. And after speaking with many candidates, I mean, hundreds of candidates throughout my career, that's the first thing you want to define. Accept the piece that it unfortunately didn't go as planned. Because the first thing that comes to mind is, oh goodness, failure, I failed. And keep in mind, it's not the candidate's fault, or it's not the employee's fault.
I was just going to say that the acceptance that these circumstances are out of your control, but that's
Absolutely.
the reality.
Absolutely. You have many that know that and they accept that. But then you also have many that say, oh my goodness, it's me. What could I have done better? And that's something that, will differ. It differs per person. So that's key. Start off that way, and then realizing that you have to get back up. And obviously the positive changes will eventually come. Key nowadays is having that patience. I mean, the level of patience, anywhere you apply to nowadays, it probably will take quite some time, more time than it did before this all happened, where, hiring managers are swamped. They're just getting back into their workspace. They are adjusting themselves. So what it will take for a candidate, or even someone that is just kind of sitting home and thinking, what's next? Because that's you have thousands of questions. Going online is key. Networking, LinkedIn, as we all know, is such a great tool. Many don't realize that how effective LinkedIn can be, not only to search for work, for a great opportunity, but also to network with others. I remember getting on LinkedIn many years ago, when I was recruiting. I said, and I'm so used to, and this is going way back, monster.com, those career
Yes,
websites.
I remember that. Yeah.
Monster, Career Builder. And I think anybody watching this that knows, we're going back like 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
They're still out there, but then you have, now so many other job boards that you can apply to. So what it is, it's an overwhelming feeling. We all know that it's an overwhelming feeling. So, like I've seen in great videos that you've done with your great speakers, journaling, is one thing that I recommend also, is sitting down and just, writing down really, where do you want to go from here? Because first of all, it doesn't matter if you were laid off or furloughed from a company, but you've only been there for about a year or 5 or even 10. I think it's best that you sit down and look at, your short-term and long-term goals, as in you have to now focus on where to go next. Because
that's a really good tip. Yeah. Good advice.
What many people nowadays do, is they'll sit and still wonder and worry about, oh goodness, I lost my job. Or those that are furloughed, oh, am I ever going to get that opportunity again? I mean, there are so many ways to cope with that. Whereas you have to go back to the acceptance piece. Jot down your short-term goals and long-term goals, as in, where do you see your best self, right? Your personal brand, because you have to pick that up again. If you haven't looked for a job for 10 years and here you are, interviewing skills, I mean, you have to start from scratch. So it's that overwhelming feeling which you have to overcome. And I think key is writing down, sitting down, and even if you have to maybe talk to someone, get a support system going.
Yes.
I remember when I was laid off many years ago, this happened to me one time. You have questions. You don't want to be bothered sometimes to ask anyone for support or for help. If you're in that case, in that situation at this point, trust me, it's going to be a lot tougher, because you'll need that support. I think this is a time where we can't sit and say, okay, look, I'm just going to sit by myself, figure it out. No, you're going to need that support. And what I mean by that is, I recommend reach out to a mentor, reach out to maybe 1, 2, or 3 mentors that you've had in your career. Think of those that have positively influenced you, that you can reach out to. Maybe you don't have their number, contact them through LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever it takes, or contact, someone that you know of that may know the person. The reason I say that is because you want to look at and focus on your accomplishments from your most recent job where you were furloughed from or laid off from. And then, questions are, well, why was my position eliminated? I had a corporate position, 15 years, 10 years, you see it a lot happening now in the hospitality world, in the hotel world, furloughed. And then all of a sudden, as of, tomorrow, you're no longer with the company and they're eliminating positions. So it's key to really focus on your accomplishments. It could be from your previous jobs, but then write them down, 3 to 5 accomplishments, focus on those. And then how will you take those accomplishments and incorporate that in your next new career move? Because that's eventually what I think you have to focus on also. What I mean by that is that, when you're not working for such a long time and then now say you're called back in to do the job, after 3-4 months, maybe 5 or 6 months, it's kind of almost like starting a whole new position or starting a whole new, job or career.
It's starting over.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that piece of advice, I think I would say applies to anybody really going back out there, because working remote and doing the virtual meetings and things like that is new to many, maybe. And they had to adjust. So really the key is really to focus on that next career move. And what do you still want to accomplish? What would you like to accomplish either in your new role or in your current role that you're gonna, let's hope and pray that you go back to it. What will you want to accomplish? How do you want to be a stronger performer? It allows you to think. It allows you to think and reflect more on where do you see your career going. And you know what? Many, Monica, will probably end up saying, this is really not even the job I want to go back to.
Right. So that time can be used to have these sort of epiphanies, correct? So
absolutely.
So one of the things that you mentioned in terms of them, people getting ready for the next move, say somebody doesn't feel that maybe they, whatever job they're looking at, their qualifications, how do they sort of market those qualifications, how the lack or the qualifications impact that job search?
Well, it's always important to let's go back to your resume. Someone's
yes, I was going to mention that. Yes.
You go back first. That's the first thing you're going to do. I know many who have not updated their resume and their skills for a long time. They update their LinkedIn. Simple, right? You update your LinkedIn, but they forget sometimes, you have to have that resume ready. And I think it's a lesson maybe, and I think it's in a positive note. It's a lesson for many also that it can happen to you. It can happen to you because again, I reflect back and I say, the time when I was laid off, it was a phone call. It was a group of about 8 of us that was laid off. And yeah, you have to be thinking, all right, now I got to get back on that resume. I got to get back and look at my qualifications. I have to go back and look at my skill set. But keep in mind, when you're with a company for such a long time, you don't ever think of, hey, this is going to be one day me where I have to go back and update it. I say that even sometimes, when I see a resume, when I'm interviewing a candidate and I have, I'm looking at that piece of paper and I'm thinking, oh goodness, you want to help this person because the resume looks good, but you see a few things there based on, the conversation or the interview. When you don't have the necessary qualifications for a position that you see online, you know, you want to look at when you're at home, you know, you're looking days, and you want to have goals for yourself on how many positions you want to apply to. But then you want to focus on, maybe you've done a training, maybe you've done a workshop, maybe you've done a webinar, even during the time home, because many companies have offered free webinars online. It was offered, you know, even universities have offered that. I think that many have some type of qualification that they maybe don't even realize, and then forget to put that on their resume. So I think what it is, you want to focus on your it's common talk, you know, your strengths. But really, what can you do to be an added value to a company that maybe is not on your resume, but you've done something in your previous position that you can add on. And I think many people do forget to put that on their resume, or they forget that altogether. That they have a specific qualification that applies to a position, but they forget that they have it, or that skill, that specific skill.
So I just wanted to tell people that if they're enjoying this video, to subscribe to my channel, because there's more of you coming up as well. So they can hit that notification bell and be notified when that new video comes out. But so going back to what you were just talking about, the resume, you mentioned as an opportunity that they have this downtime, that there are companies that are offering seminars and maybe training online and things like that. Are those sort of trainings, is that considered a continuing education thing that you can put on a resume, or not, or it depends on what it is?
It actually depends on what it is. Just to give you an example, I've done talent acquisition for a iconic hotel in Miami, and you know, hospitality and hotel, you know, is recovering. They're recovering. You know, I talk to the colleagues, and you know, with that, you know, such a positive attitude, not only in the States but also in Europe. It's key to find the right training or certification, or webinar or whatnot. For example, I did a hospitality and tourism management certification during this a little bit of downtime. This was back in April, offered by FAU, my former university where I graduated from. Go out, yeah, go Owls. So you know, it was such a proud moment, because I said, I went online and I went LinkedIn again. I went on LinkedIn, and they did an amazing job to post that. And it was absolutely free, free. And I mean, thousands of people registered for it.
That's awesome.
You know, online, it was great. And then you have, for example, in the hotel business, you know, hospitality, the American Hotel and Lodging Association, you know, they do free service trainings, but it's more of a certification as far as continuing education.
Right.
You know, many may decide that, wow, that's that trigger. Hey, I you know, had an opportunity to go through this certification, and they decide, you know, I want to continue on.
Right.
But you do get credits. Certain certifications do offer credits. I know FAU does, you know, for that. And, you know, it's all virtual. It's the comfort of your own home.
Yes.
To give you an example, you know, they did it for free during, you know, the first 3 months of the pandemic. And now they're offering, many places actually are offering, you know, at a discounted price, because they see the amount of you know, interest from, you know, potential, you know, participants. So you have to find the right one, and you have to look at, you know, are you maybe pursuing another career move? Then learn something in that area, you know, maybe entrepreneurship, whatever the case is, because I know many people are kind of, you know, venturing out into that, you know, doing their own thing and things like that, and which I think is great. You know, if you have the experience, go for it. You know, I highly encourage it. But it's all over the web, it's all over the internet, and LinkedIn, you know, that's just, it connects you to many people, and
that's true.
And you get a nice certificate, you know, and it's valid. It's not, you know, one of those things that, because many people may think that.
Yeah, you're accumulating knowledge too, so it's a good thing. It's always strengthening those strengths.
Exactly.
Right?
Good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. So just to wrap up, Barbara, can you give people 5 tips on how to cope with stress of unemployment or furlough, please?
Absolutely. I go back to that acceptance piece. I think that's key, to reflect on the fact that if you have had many accomplishments already, and again, many people, now is the time to sit down and jot down their accomplishments. And that means professional wise, but also personal. I think it's good to incorporate that, your professional and personal development. How has that evolved? Write that down and then say, hey, I can do this, right? I am not going to sit still, and I'm not going to have this stress, take over. So that's definitely key. That's kind of a good way to start. I think second of all is, and I'm going to actually give a couple of examples which have worked for me also. I'm a firm believer in meditating and being mindful of, especially when you're working in a fast-paced environment. And then all of a sudden now you're in a slow pace environment. Well, sometimes not even, any pace. It's just, you're just thinking without realizing how much you're thinking. So I think key is to really step away for those that are working remote, such as myself. Even then, you have to step away for a second and say, okay, look, let me be mindful, take, 10, 15 minutes, meditate, go out, I know it sounds cliche because, I think anybody nowadays that, they're indoors, you have to step out. You have to step out and go out and take a breather.
Yes.
You have to take a breather. You have to remind yourself to breathe.
Yes.
Because you have to remind yourself to breathe. And I think that's so important. And then, I, for example, I'm a strong believer, using the use of essential oils.
Yes.
And you know
Absolutely.
exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
It's funny, in the hotel that I worked for in Miami, I remember at some point they would always, make fun of me and say, oh my God, Barbara, your office always has these, like scents and things like that. And they're always asking me, well, what is it? And, some would come into my office and say, oh my goodness, it doesn't smell too good. And then over time, it was funny because they would come back into the office.
Interesting.
They would come back into the office. And then I said, almost like told you so.
Or what are you doing here again?
Or what are you doing here? And then, I started noticing that, scents are a big thing especially now.
Absolutely. I agree.
And, and I'm going to share that now with you also. And, whoever watches this,
yes.
When you're in an office interviewing candidates, obviously right now you can't do that. It has to be, virtual or, through video conferencing. But, in my office, I would always have either an incense. I use Pondicherry, which is a natural incense, which I would have and, obviously not have it anywhere visible. And I would kind of, turn that on, maybe an hour before, just to, first of all, you're prepping the candidate for a potential, role, with the company. So essential
You're
oils.
setting the mood. It definitely sets the mood. Absolutely.
Absolutely. You're setting the mood. So that helps. I believe that was my second one, right? The second, the third?
I think that was third.
Okay, the third. And then, and then the fourth and fifth, which I'm actually going to combine, is that do take time for yourself, with family, home, and, kids, obviously you want to keep up, the contact with family and support. And even when you're back out, in your work environment, many are back out working 2 to 3 times a week. Stay connected. And, I'm not saying connect everybody on your list who you haven't spoken to in, 5 or 10 years, because that's just way off. But I think it's important to really stay connected. And then also, when you're having that downtime, which is normal, not be afraid. not be afraid to say, all right, I'm going to contact, someone. And I go back to the mentor part. If someone wants to reach out to a mentor and say, ask for advice, don't be afraid, because I know many that just are so fearful of asking for help now, especially nowadays, right? But it's okay, because you're anxious, you're paranoid, you're anxious, you're fearful.
It's
and
natural.
for many, it's natural. And I know for many, it may not go away anytime soon. But to deal with that, it's more of a subconscious way where many people don't even know they're dealing with it, that they're stressing, right? So I think it's important to talk and do the journaling. It's so important. And if you have to do a journaling, take that time for yourself. And meditation, to go back to the second one I mentioned, incorporate them all and just sit down and realize that stress it's a given. We all go through it. We all deal with it, and you just have to see what's best, what works best for you. So I would definitely recommend that. And you know what, and also say, if you're having a negative thought, that's kind of, the fifth one is when you're having a negative thought, think of some mantras that, daily can help you. But I always say, take a negative thought, but then focus on gratitude, and then say, you know what, this is negative, or somewhat negative, because trust me, in these times, you're going to hear a bunch of negativity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes.
All of that, and you have to still listen to that piece, but then say, I'm going to take that negativity and think of something I appreciate.
Right, you have to transmute that negative energy into something positive. And I think gratitude is a very peaceful, positive affirmation to do, for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, Barbara, this was fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm going to link up your information below in the description, so people know how to get in touch with you if they have questions or need you desperately. They can definitely get in touch with you. So I just wanted to say thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And you guys, please subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends. See you next time.